We are quickly now moving toward the end of Basics of Biblical Greek and toward the end of this term, and as we have walked through the indicatives and the participles, the non-indicatives, subjunctive, infinitive, imperative, we now return to the indicative for a week, and because of didwmi and me verbs being a unique class of verbs, we'll look at them in the indicative this week and next week in the non-indicative. They are unique because of their irregularity, and so they need to be accounted for in that way. By this point in the term, we have memorized so many paradigms and gone through so much material that sometimes students will look at the me verb and the way our textbook is organized and think of something irregular at the end and throw up their arms and say, I just can't take any more, stop. I can't take any more irregularity. Even the things that seem regular, are supposed to be regular in Greek, seem irregular to me. I can't take it anymore, and so here I am presenting irregularity. If you feel that way, it's okay. Most students do, but let me just set things clearly for a minute. Though this seems irregular, you know so much already that you will find the few items that we're learning here today fit well within what you already know. So let me give you just a word of confidence there. If you know the tense formatives, you know the case ending chart and the active and passive endings, the primary and secondary verbal endings, then you are going to be able to handle these, even though we talk about irregularity. So let's get to the way that we handle irregularity. 5 rules in dealing with me verbs. Rule number 1, as you've been looking at this slide. Me verbs reduplicate their initial stem letter to form the present and imperfect, and separate the reduplicated consonant with an iota. And you see it here, didwmi. Do is the stem, so the delta reduplicates, iota in the middle, as is underlined, and we have didwmi. And that continues on down the present didwmi, didos, didosin, didamen, didate, didaasen. And the imperfect, we still have the characteristics of the present because it's built on the present tense stem, but what else does the imperfect have? The augment, that's right, and because it has an augment, what endings does it use? Secondary endings, so you can see how that plays out here. Edidun, edidus, edidu, edidamen, edidate, edidun. I place these other tense stems here, aorist and perfect, and you can look at the paradigm of me just for comparison's sake, and we'll look at how those bear out in just a moment here, but look at the aorist and perfect for a minute. Do you see something that's similar? The kappa, alpha, and the aorist? Note that now, but we'll come back to it in a few moments. So rule 1, me verbs reduplicate their initial stem letter, and we differentiate it from the perfect, as we'll note in a few moments, because it's always with the iota in the present. Rule 2. Me verbs do not ordinarily use a connecting or thematic vowel in the present indicative. The personal ending is added directly to the stem. And you can see that here. Do is our stem, reduplication, and we just have a lengthened connecting vowel from omicron to omega, and we'll talk about that as a characteristic of me verbs in a moment as well. Irregularity handled by these rules, and you know enough now that you're going to be able to account for these irregularities. Rule 3, me verbs employ 3 different personal endings in the present active indicative. the first and third singular and the third plural. But even here, though we say there are 3 different personal endings, this is true, but didwmi, you already know, as its lexical form is didwmi. So that's not really anything new that you have to learn. Really just need to learn third singular and third plural. And even here, once you learn third plural, you'll recognize that third singular is different from that. Third singular, didosin, would normally look like a third plural present. But if we look at third plural, didaasin, well, once we memorize that by process of elimination, we can recognize the difference between didosin. You seeing the characteristics here? Okay. Look at rule number 4. The stem vowel of me verbs can lengthen, shorten, or drop out. As seen in the table below, the stem vowel omicron lengthens to omega in the singular, and we've noticed this already. Didwmi, didos, didosin, and then didamen, didate, didaasin. And the conjugation again here is noted. Me, sigma, sigma iota, men, te, alpha, sigma iota. So some irregularities, but not that many really. Once you have the basics of the me verb down, the idea of reduplication, the possibility of a lengthened connecting vowel, things move quickly. The irregularity of me verbs and rule 5. I noted this earlier. Kappa aorist. Most of the me verbs use kappa alpha as their tense formative in the aorist. Kappa aorist, and these are distinguished from the perfect tense by the reduplication in the perfect. And you can see it here. Aorist of me verbs, and then the first aorist thematic, and then the perfect thematic here. Again, that perfect always has the reduplication, the aorist does not. Here is the indicative active of didwmi, and here's the full paradigm. If you want to take a screenshot of this or set this to memory, if you have this down, the irregularities go away, and you don't have to be able to restate all of these words or the full paradigm. You just need to be able to recognize when you're reading what you're reading. And you can see it here very easily. The present, you have the reduplication. It's a reduplication of with an iota as the vowel and not an epsilon, different from the perfect. In the last column, you have a lengthened connecting vowel in the singular, but not in the plural. The aorist differs from the perfect in reduplication, though both have kappa alpha. And that perhaps is the most important thing as we conclude here that we need to take away from me verbs, that aorist has kappa alpha in the me verb. And how do we differentiate? I mean, if you look at an aorist and if you see the kappa alpha, we've all along said that's perfect. Well, here's the irregularity. But even this irregularity can be accounted for by what you already know. Perfect always has the reduplication, and aorist does not. It has just the augment. So congratulations, you can get the me verbs down really by what you already know. You can account for many of these irregularities and still parse words and make progress. We have not done as much vocab recently in the conclusion of these chapters because there's only been a word or two. Here there are a few more words this week, and I've just set one out for us. Loipos, think of loitering. Remaining is an adjective, rest is a noun, the rest is an adverb. Loipo is the root, and so you would want to use the bridge concept for other words as well. There aren't that many this week and go pretty easily. I encourage you to continue to review your vocab. Every week you need to be reviewing all of your vocab. Review your bridge mechanism. Again, the more creative and the more consistent, the more likely you will be to be successful with vocab.